Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. And it's time for an episode of The World According to Danielle Park. Danielle, a regular guest on the show, strong opinions, strong reactions. If you've got anything you want to talk about that you'd like to ask Danielle, send me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Danielle, welcome back. How are you?
Hey. Thanks, Kerry. I'm good. I don't think I have strong opinions. Do I? I think I have very balanced opinions.
Wallflower. You're a wallflower. Everyone knows it.
I try and avoid the extremes, but I must say it's an extreme time. It seems that, you know, the emotion of the moment tries to push people to one side or the other. And I always go back to my experience as a lawyer years ago, helping people trying to figure out how to resolve cases. And you know this too, Carrie, like if you if you didn't have fairness on both sides or a will to try and find an agreement that both people could live with. If you had people that were angry or, you know, taking extreme positions and just couldn't relent on anything, you could never get to a resolution, right? Then you'd have to go before a judge, and the judge would dispense a judgment, which neither party typically liked. It was very rarely anyone's idea of fairness, right? When a judgment came down, both people would typically be teed off. Mm-hmm. And it would be, well, you know what? That's what you deserve because you couldn't come to any kind of an agreement between you.
Because you weren't grown-ups and, you know. And
sometimes one party is and the other side isn't, right? Sometimes one party is trying and the other party won't and just digs in. And in which case, again, you cannot come to an agreement unless both parties are motivated. So I think that's the state of many things today. For better or for worse, we've gone to these polar extreme positions, and that's why we're all kind of stuck, and the economy's stuck, and we can't kind of get movement going forward because, you know, everyone's sort of fighting for themselves more than fighting for what might help. You know, let's say, I know everyone hates the greater good, but the economy as a whole needs a certain amount of inputs to move it forward. And I think that the fundamental difference from today versus, for example, 2008 is that even in 2008, there was this sense that the global financial crisis had happened to everybody kind of all at the same time. You know, the credit bubble burst, and there was a sense of urgency in concert action because governments and central bankers all over the world said, oh my God, you know, we have to get together and do something to stop this Great Recession. And in the last few years, you've seen more of a individualistic approach. So you have individual families saying, you know, to hell with the global economy, to hell with what's best for demand and consumption. I got to manage my household balance sheet here. I got to manage my income statement so that we don't go, you know, under as a family. So you have this focus on, you know, separatism, if you will. And you're seeing that in governments and central banks too now. I think everyone is sort of, you know, saying we have to do what's right for America, or China, we have to do what's right for China. And that's why you have this period of great position taking rather than consensus building.
Yeah, so you think that everybody has to like pretty much say, we're in this together, this is a mess, and if we don't pull together and really do what's in everybody's interest here, not just this country or that country, not just this state or that state, but everybody pulls together and say, we need fundamental reforms, which you and I have talked about many times. And we have to do this now because the price of not doing it is huge, unbelievable pain further down the road. You think that's the key to this, huh?
Well, yes, and I always go back to just basic personal experience as a professional advisor, over the years, because whether it's financial consulting or whether it's, again, with respect to litigation that's ongoing, you would sit at a table with people. I've done this many times, probably so have you, and they'll each advance their position. They want this and they want that. And you say, okay, well, both of you cannot have what you want. You're going to have to find something in the middle. Well, we can't. Well, you're going bankrupt. And as a country, I think that's the message. Whether you're Republican or Democrat is really not the issue here. They each can dig in and justify and, perform to a camera for why they want what they want. At the end of the day, you're going bankrupt, right? So it's either figure it out or it'll be figured out for you eventually, which will be something that nobody wants.
Yeah, the current situation is dire. The country and the world, not just the U.S., not just Canada, the world is headed for bankruptcy. And when a country goes bankrupt, either through a deflationary bust or an inflationary bust, you can take your pick, the fallout from it is catastrophic, and it affects everybody. It affects your standard of living. It affects your freedoms. It affects your legal liability. It affects every aspect of your life, which is why it's far more important to stop playing the games. No sane human being out there can say that the government is spending your money wisely and couldn't get by with a 35% cut. And it's simple. It's either you cut now or you let the bankruptcy happen, and then the cuts are going to be imposed, but they're going to be done either way. So it's better that you sit down, that the parties agree on what should be done, and it happens in an orderly fashion.
And, the other thing is that you can talk all day about the stimulus. People hoping that central bankers can pump money and overwhelm all the other factors, the complete disintegration of cooperative behavior, the complete eradication of math, all that everyone keeps trying to perpetuate. And then they say, oh, well, the central bankers can fix this. They'll just keep pumping liquidity in and that'll balance this out. That chart I put on the blog today of the velocity of money is one that I go back to all the time, because economic theory would suggest that if you're pumping all this liquidity into the financial system, that eventually you're going to get some movement through the real economy, that there'll be a benefit in terms of demand stimulation. But in the reality of it today, that is not the case. I mean, just look at the actual chart, the actual math of where that money is moving. And the answer is it's not stimulating jobs. It's not stimulating demand. It's just funneling into a few things like commodities. For example, periodically we have these bursts of commodity inflation thanks to free money flowing around. And in fact, there's a direct correlation between that spike in prices that companies then have to scramble to absorb. And how do they do that? Primarily by reducing their payroll expenses. So here you've got all these debates and central bankers talking about how they're trying to do this to stimulate the economy. The only way you can stimulate an economy is to get consumers back to a position where they have some resilience or some financial strength stored. And they can't do that if they don't have any wage growth, right? So it's this virtuous cycle that's absolutely damning the world economy at the moment. The more free money pumped in, which is actually not free, is actually costing everything, the more you're destroying the prospects for recovery and the more you're hurting the consumers that you're trying to stimulate. So at some point, surely, there comes a point where you realize that is, self-defeating and not actually helpful at all. And if we get to there, then I have hope that, we'll have some forced action. Because let's face it, the more they've stimulated, the more they've pumped in liquidity, the more they've elongated this bad behavior, the more they've allowed these two disparate sides, extreme positions left and right, to not come to any agreement or consensus or actual consensus or actual concessions, let's put it that way.
Sure.
Because as long as you got a line of credit, you can dilly-dather and go on all day long, and you don't have to actually get down to the nuts and bolts of it. So as soon as that final phase comes where, there's no more help to be hoped for, let's put it that way, from the stimulus, you'll finally get people having to confront the facts. And, I continue to believe that will come. I know that many people somehow think it won't, but I go back to, we've been at this for thousands of years, and we've had these periods many times, and it's not the first time that countries have gone bankrupt. It's not the first time that the world seemed to be in a hell of a mess, Kerry. I actually put an article on this week on the blog as well about Venetian society in the early 14th century, and how, the rich merchants basically started to make a book of upper class nobility, and you had to be in the book to get the key contracts and business opportunities. And if you weren't in the book, it was like, oh, so sad, so bad, you don't get in. So this idea that, at a certain point, all societies have a concentration of wealth and power in a certain group of people, and that once they're there, they love to pull the ladder up after them and say, oops, sorry, enough up here, you guys can't come. This is just human behavior. It's like your kids coming home from school and telling you what goes on in the schoolyard, and you saying to yourself, oh yeah, that was like that when I was there too. Well, that's because it's the way humans tend to be. So I think that, we shouldn't overemphasize it and say that it's never been this bad before, but at the same time, it is bad, and it does need some change of our behavior and thinking.
Yeah, well, I think to a large extent, it's never been this bad because the whole world financial system is one big happy family, if you will. And if one piece falls, it all falls. And before, I don't think that was quite the case. The other thing that you're describing is diminishing marginal return of money created out of thin air, that it's actually costing the economy for every dollar that's created rather than adding any benefit to it. And I definitely believe that you're seeing that in the chart. You're seeing it in slowing economic growth, slowing GDP growth, which is a lousy indicator of true economic health of a society anyway, but it's basically the one that we have. So I guess to sum it all up, everybody, it's an awful tasting sandwich that everybody's going to have to take a bite of, and better to do it now when there's still some water on the table and you can wash it down than later on when the glasses are empty, and then you're really going to get the full taste of it. But I don't know. My faith in humanity, I'd like to believe that they'll find a way out, and no doubt they will. I would just prefer that it didn't come down to the precipice where we're staring down at a black hole that we're going to fall into if they can't come to an agreement on it, because it really requires an accord where all this debt somehow is wiped off the books, both sovereign and individual and corporate. Nobody wants to do that, least of all the people holding the notes, because that's how they make their money. That's their asset. But anyway, Danielle, so we find you on jugglingdynamite.com. We will talk to you in 2 weeks, and to hear this interview again, as well as check out all the world's leading headlines, it's financialsurvivalnetwork.com. And you be well, Danielle.
Okay, Kerry.